Okay, great. So thanks everyone for coming. Oop, very much for the making the most out of Botany 2025, which is a little student conference guide for yeah, the Botany conference is crazily going to be here in less than a month. Summer has been flying by, at least for me. So first, to start, we wanted to go through some of the goals of this meeting. Had to include some goofy pics, so you'll see some funny ones of my past. I've been to botany now 3 times. So I went my first one, well, actually my first one was a virtual conference in 2021. Then I went to Alaska. I was a plants grant scholar then, and then I went to Boise the year after in 2023 because I was elected to be the student rep, and then last year in Grand Rapids. So I got a couple of photos in here, such as this one of Eli and Ben in Boise. But regardless, some of the goals of this meeting are to one, share some general conference details and the events that are student-centered that will be happening at the conference. We'll also go through some tips on how to network efficiently, and then we'll also give some ideas about how to keep your budget in check. Conferences can be, a little expensive. So it's great to kind of think about how can we optimize our money and save as much as possible. We'll go through some presentation tips, both for an oral presentation as well as a poster presentation. And then finally, we also want to learn, if we have any extra time at the end of this Botany 360, to learn about what your goals are for attending the conference. And we want to, me and Ben, help you achieve those. So first, I thought it would be good to introduce both me and Ben, are your student reps, Botanical Society of America student reps. So my name is Josh Felton. I am the student rep from 2023 to 2025. So my term is actually wrapping up at the end of the conference in Palm Springs. And I use he, they pronouns, he or they, depending on whatever you want to use. And I am a PhD candidate at Cornell University. Ben, you want to introduce yourself? Ben, you're muted.
Yeah, can you hear me now? I'm sorry. So I never knew I was muted. My name is Benjamin Ajayi, current student representative, and my term is from 2024 to 2026. A second year PhD student at Florida State University, where my basic specialization is ecology and evolution, and my research basically focus on ecology and conservation of Squabi americana, which is a federally endangered hemiparasitic plant. So yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I realized I probably should have mentioned a little bit about what I do for my PhD. So I work on the genus Catopsis, which is in the bromeliad family, and I'm doing some phylogeography within Catopsis natans, then also looking at the evolution of sexual systems across the genus. So if you are interested in some more student resources that Ben and I have compiled, you can check out this tiny URL here, BSA Student Resources. There's actually just updated earlier today, so that should have just some information about if you want to get more involved within the society, how you can do so. So this is a little crazy. I'm trying to, try some new things out. So we want to know a little bit about you. So we want to know like why you are attending the conference, and perhaps maybe that is to present, maybe it's to meet new people / collaborators to network, or maybe it's just to get some broad inspiration for your research. But the way we want to know what you want to get out of this conference is I have a one of these things. I don't know how to describe it, but let me stop sharing for a second. Put this in the chat because I really am terrible with technology nowadays. But this is a little Minty word cloud thing, and I am very curious to see what everyone says. So within that link, it should provide you a space to answer why you're attending this conference. So feel free, type away. Let's populate this word cloud. And you can also join, I think, there at the link above. Please tell me if it's not working out as well. Perfect. Okay, so we got a lot of networking. A lot of networking seems to be big for folks. Goals for attending the conference. We also have some folks interested in just an intro to conferences. You know, what does that look like having a society or a broad conference? We have some folks looking to present, of course, which is a huge thing. Networking, once again, we have just network. Poster presentations, that's going to be awesome. So we'll talk a little bit about those, as well as the oral presentations, as I mentioned. Plant bioinformatics, that's great. You'll be learning, there's workshops that happen on Sunday, which are a great space to learn some bioinformatics, some of the new methods that people are doing. So that's really cool. Reuniting with old friends. That is one of my favorite things, and why I usually attend conferences is to connect
Yeah,
um, with folks. Did you write that, Ben?
yeah, I did.
Nice, nice. Well, I'm excited to see Ben in person too. So great. Any last minute ones? Otherwise, I'm going to take a little screenshot of this. I like this. Sweet. Okay. I'm trying things out here, trying new things. Ah, okay. Great. So moving on, we wanted to quickly first give a little conference at a glance, kind of looking broadly over what's going to be happening at the conference. So to start, Saturdays and Sundays are Saturday fully is dedicated to field trips. So most folks, depending on if they are participating in field trips or workshops, will arrive on Saturday or Sunday, as well as, you know, if you do have a field trip that leaves maybe at 8 a.m. on Saturday, you'd come in on Friday. Hopefully you have all your travel arrangements planned. If you're flying, if you're driving, you might be able to be a little more flexible. But so we got Saturday and Sunday with some field trips. Most of them are filled, but in the next couple slides, they'll have some information about some of the field trips that are open, which field trips are a really great space to kind of get acquainted with the area where the conference is. This year, I'm not doing any field trips because I signed up very late and I missed the ones I wanted to go to, such as the Fern field trip. But I've done that one in the past, for example, in Alaska, and I was able to, yeah, see some new plants I've never seen before, beef up my iNaturalist account, spreading the range of my observations, which is really cool. But check those out. And then Sunday is usually a workshop full day, as well as when the conference kind of technically officially starts with the plenary address in the evening. But there's workshops during the day. There's a mix of full day workshops and half day workshops, with some being half day starting in the morning and finishing up at lunch, and then also some that start after lunch and go until about 5 o'clock. Workshops are a great space to learn some new methods, as I mentioned earlier, such as bioinformatics, as well as some teaching workshops. And there are just some other general purpose workshops or skills that you can learn from these workshops. And when I was making this presentation with Ben, we saw that there were many openings still available. So if you want to go, if you haven't signed up for a workshop and you're curious about which ones are being offered, or you didn't, take a look at it when you're registering, you can find more information about that on the conference website. And you can easily add a workshop as well as add a field trip if you're interested in one of the ones that are still open, through modifying your registration, which you can do, as I mentioned, on that conference website. So Sunday evening, starting with the plenary till Wednesday around, say, 5 o'clock, is the like main conference, the real, I guess, showstopper of the event. And so here there's a mix of both regular talks as well as some more special topics that are kind of wrapped up into these different like sessions that are either symposiums or symposia or colloquiums, which is like a fancy word for a symposium. But these ones if you've never been to a conference before, are really cool because the symposia and the colloquia are usually the people who are presenting in these sessions are invited to present on some certain topics, say, for example, like ferns broadly. So there would be a whole symposia about different aspects of fern biology, and the speakers there would be invited. So if you are, say, you looking through the schedule and you see a symposium that might pique your interest, I would recommend maybe just staying in that session for the whole time. Usually they're not more than a half of a day, or a couple hours, and it could be a really good way to get really deep into some certain topic. Wednesday in the evening, there's the conference-wide celebration, which is always a good time to wrap up the conference. There is music, there's drinks, there's food, and it's just a good way to say goodbye to your old friends, as well as a really great spot to network as well, especially after you've seen, say, the talk or a poster of someone whose research is you're interested in. You can go up to them at this conference-wide celebration and exchange contacts before you all are gone and going separate ways. So some last calls, as I mentioned. So the field trip deadline to sign up for those is July 1st, which is tomorrow. So if you are curious about some of these field trips, which these are the ones that have openings, you can sign up today. So take a look at that. As well as lodging, we have some overflow hotel rooms that are available that are in the Courtyard by Marriott, which is not where the conference is, but it's very close. And there are student rates available there, which comes out to $139 a night. And there's some limited availability, but just in case, if you haven't figured out your housing situation, keep that in mind, as well as keep the field trips in mind. Also, just to preface too, if anyone has any questions, because I'm sharing my screen, I can't really see anything, but feel free to unmute yourself and just shout out your questions. As well as Ben, of course, if you want to pop in and say something that I missed, please do. But moving on to some general tips. So one of the first main things that it's really good to think about when going to one of these big conferences is to kind of have at least some plan about your schedule and which talks you want to go to. So what we recommend is that you plan out your talks in advance using the conference app, which I don't think the conference app is live right now, but you will get an email once that app comes available, which usually is like a week or two before the conference, after all the scheduling conflicts are fixed. But that is to say, if you haven't checked the conference website recently, the tentative schedule, so like blocked out before any conflicts are rearranged, is up on the Botany website right now. So you can take a look to see, say, when are the reproductive biology sessions happening? Are they happening on Mondays or Tuesdays, or just being able to broadly plan your schedule right now. So think about doing something like that. But with planning your schedule, you also want to make sure that you don't pack it too tight, like going from, say, a talk in this session from reproductive biology to a talk in the systematic section, and you have to run, it's a talk at 12 to 12:15, and the next talk is 12:15 to 12:30. You're going to be running a lot, and that really will burn you out quickly within the conference. So make sure that you do plan time to meet people and rest. Looks like Ben has something to say.
Yes, for this number 2 point, which you said, don't pack your schedule with too many talks to avoid burnout. It happens to me last year conference where I was trying to attend 3 talks at once. In the long run, I end up missing the entire talks, and I got back to my hotel very tired, very wearied, and I was angry with myself. So I would say that this particular point is very, very crucial to us. We should try and plan all the talks we want to attend in such a way that it won't be too much. Yeah.
Yeah, you can make your schedule. It's probably going to change at some point. Who knows who you might sit next to in a session, and they might mention, oh, I'm going to this talk next. And you're like, oh, I had this on my schedule, but that actually seems cooler. Just be a little bit flexible with what you plan. Another big tip in terms of networking is to think about who you want to meet beforehand. And a good way to do this about figuring out who is going to be at the conference is by using the schedule of who's presenting. Like you'll know if they're presenting, they're going to be there. There's sometimes some more senior faculty professors that might be at the conference but aren't presenting. But a good rule of thumb is if you see someone give, like people, pretty much most folks who go to the conference present either a poster or a presentation. So you can use that to kind of be a proxy of who's going to be at the conference. And so after looking to see, who you might want to meet, say it could be, if you're an undergrad, it could be folks who you want to do grad school with. It could be like the professors or grad students within that lab the lab you want to join. You might want to reach out to those folks. Could also be, say folks like me or Ben, and you want to talk to us about student opportunities or things about botany. Like, feel free to send people like that an email or a message on Blue Sky before, just to see if they're willing to grab a coffee together, or you could possibly grab lunch during one of the days as well. That's really, if you do reach out to folks, people do enjoy that. It shows some serious initiative, and they would really, I think, be interested in wanting to connect with you.
Yeah, can I say something about this point again? I remember 2022 conference when I knew I was coming. I sent email to a couple of faculties, like 5, 6 of them, and after I told them to, okay, we had a chat, and I invited them for my talks, and after that I discussed the fact that I will be willing to apply for PhD to US because I was coming from Africa. I'm willing to apply to PhD, and a couple of them said that, hey, you can go ahead. And the current professor that I'm with now at Florida State University, I met him for the first time at the Alaska Botany conference. We had a talk. He asked me to go ahead and apply, and I applied, and I got the offer. And today I'm in Florida State University.
Yeah, there we go. I also met my advisor for the first time at the Botany conference, PhD advisor, through some networking led by my plants mentor. So I see there's a question in the chat from Eddie. He was asking, is there a way to connect with the student chapters beforehand? That's a great question. Right now, there is not a way to connect with student chapters beforehand, but this is a space that I think there is a student chapter meetup on the schedule. You just would go to that, or attending the undergraduate mixer as well as the broad student social. Because the student chapters, it's really just who from those chapters is going to be there. But if you do have any specific questions about maybe forming a student chapter, feel free to shoot me a message, because I am one of the officers for the Cornell student chapter, and I can talk about what that looks like broadly. So next slide, the next point was actually what Ben mentioned. So if you are presenting and you invite people you meet to your talk as well as your poster. And one way to do this is, as Ben mentioned, by reaching out to the folks who you're interested in networking with, by shooting them an email saying I'm talking then. But if you also have a social media account such as Blue Sky, that's another great space to get your talk on people's radars. You'll see the week or 2 weeks before the conference, if you're on these social media platforms, you'll see people mentioning like, hey, I'm giving a talk then. They might make a little advertisement for their talk or their talks if they're doing multiple, as well as sometimes labs do, hey, check out, like, for example, the SPEC lab is coming to Botany. Here are all the talks from people in our lab. So that's a great way to make sure that folks who you want to be at your talk / poster will be there. And finally, another big tip is to share your experience on Blue Sky with the hashtag BSA students as well as hashtag Botany 2025. it becomes a whole, the conference is a party itself, but then Blue Sky is also a party with all the different shenanigans that people are posting, either going out after the conference or just which cool talks they saw that day. So before we move on, if anyone has any other questions, once again, feel free, raise your hand, speak out, or put them in the chat. Next, we're going to be talking, though, about student-specific events. So the first one is the Careers in Botany panel/luncheon, which is happening on Monday. It's during lunchtime. The registration is required for this event, and it is unfortunately sold out this year. So if you did not sign up, make sure to keep it on your radar for future botanies that you go to. But to summarize what this event is, it's a luncheon, and we invited 10 career botany professors, folks who work at botanic gardens, as well as at research stations, just kind of getting a plethora of the careers you can have within botany. And there's around 4 to 8 students at each table, and you're just able to talk to these different professionals, and then they rotate around. So you get to one network as well as get some quick mentorship and advice from folks about their pathway to where they've gotten now into their career that they're at. So that's really great. Keep that in mind for the future if you didn't sign up this year. We have a lot of things on Monday. For example, later in the evening, we have the student social and the networking event, which costs $15 to attend, which helps cover the food that we get for the event, as well as for the renting the venue itself. It's always off campus from the conference center, so we just try to make it so students can fully unwind and network and connect with each other. This social is for undergrads to grad students. It's a whole plethora, a great space to kick it and meet folks who you're going to be potentially working within the same field for the rest of your life. Registration is required for that. It's from 9 to midnight, and you can register if you haven't already by modifying your registration, going in there and then going to the socials and events section, and then you can sign up for the social. We also have, it's less so of an event, but more of a asynchronous job board that we have, which right now there's nothing on it because it was just created for this specific botany, but it is a place for folks to put for professors to put openings, either postdoc positions as well as positions for lab technicians and grad students. And then also we have a space for folks who are early career or people early in their career, such as students and postdocs, to post if they are themselves looking for a position. So this will be continuously updated throughout the conference. We'll make sure to send this out a couple of weeks in advance of the conference, and that's usually when it starts to ramp up throughout the rest of the conference. People will be adding to this job board. And so I mentioned this. Oh, yep.
Yeah, sorry, I just quickly want to ask, so how do we confirm the venue of all these events? Is it through the Botany app, or when we get there, or is it going to email to everyone that registered for different events?
Great question. Yeah, it should be, if you're registered for the event, it will be on your schedule once you're in the app. But for now, and that will give you the room that it's in, for example, as well as the location for the student social. And so I mentioned this before on another couple slides, but you can still sign up for these events. Just log into your registration and then click that modify registration section. So moving on to the budgeting part of a conference guide is first, let's just talk about registration. So with y'all being in this Botany360, I'm guessing that means that you've already registered for the conference. But some of this advice will be for future conferences. Some of this, such as the food, will be specifically for Botany 2025. But when looking at registration, it's always best to register early for the early bird price, which is pretty easy to do. There's a lot of information that always comes out about when the early bird registration ends and when it opens. So just keep your eyes out for that for future conferences. Um, Another thing too, when registering is you can get reimbursed for your field trips. Students can get reimbursed for their field trips if you're a member of the American Society of Plant Taxonomists and or the Botanical Society of America. And you can have one field trip fee reimbursed up to $100. The one thing though, which seems to be with every reimbursement nowadays, is that that will be issued to you after the conference as a refund on your registration. So you don't get reimbursed right away. So you have to front that money, and it is first come, first serve. You could have signed up for this within your registration. You could click a box, I presume, to ask to get your field trip fee reimbursed, but just keep your eyes out for that if you did click that button on your debit or credit card, your bank statement, to see if you do get that refund. And keep your eyes out for that in the future. It used to be that you had to fill out a Google form, not a part of the registration, but now I'm happy that they've implemented that within the registration itself. And looking at accommodations, so lodging, this year compared to some conferences, like for example in Alaska, there were some student dorms that were available for lodging, which were usually at a more reduced price than what the hotel costs might be. But with it being in Palm Springs and there not being any institutions around there, there's no dorms this year. So just make sure you book your hotel with that student pricing that we have for lower rates. I hope a lot of you have already done that or have been in contact with your advisors to get your lodging set, as well as if, say, you're a plants scholar or another scholar, hopefully your lodging is helped and settled through that program. So hopefully this doesn't really concern too many folks, but in the future, just make sure you keep your eyes out for those either dorms, if that's what you're interested in, as well as the hotel student rates, because they usually do sell out. Speaking of hotel rooms, there is a roommate finder spreadsheet, which I am going to try to cheekily put this link into the chat. So if you haven't found housing yet, click this link, and it seems like there are folks who are looking for roommates still. So please tap in. And finally, Airbnbs can also be beneficial to save some money with lodging for future conferences, depending on the location where you're at. Say, for example, like this conference was going to be in Tucson at a resort, which was actually about 30 minutes away from downtown Tucson, which meant that there weren't any Airbnbs around the conference center. But back in Boise, as well as in Anchorage in Alaska, the conference center was downtown, and so there were a lot of other hotels and Airbnbs that you could book. And depending on, say, if you're going with your whole lab, you might be able to save a little bit of money, both with food because you're able to, have a whole kitchen at your disposal, as well as sometimes Airbnbs can be a little bit more affordable. Moving on to talking about food. So this year, with just everything unfortunately becoming more and more expensive, there have been a couple of cuts with food that the food that is provided for free at the conference. So in the past, there used to be food like breakfast food in the morning, which has now been shortened to just coffee and tea at only the coffee breaks. So you're going to want to make sure that before coming to the conference and starting your day that you have had breakfast either at the hotel or at your Airbnb or going out and getting breakfast. But that is to say, if you are attending some of these events, you might want to bring and pack a little small Tupperware in case you get hangry. Myself, I get very hangry, especially after watching talks all day. If I don't have myself a little croissant, you don't want to talk to me. That's a joke, but long story short, Yeah, you might want to bring a little box for potential leftovers, which you could find some at some of these events, like the student social will have snacks. All society celebration will have a lot of snacks. And the affinity group events, such as the LGBTQ plus mixer, the BIPOC mixer, all of these affinity groups will also have food there. And if you have signed up for those events, it would be maybe just a good idea to have a little Tupperware in case you want a late night snack. The Kaplan lecture, I don't even know if I should be saying this on a recording, but I'm going to say it regardless. I went for the first time in Alaska, and I've gone every single year after that because there is a lot of food and beverages there at the Kaplan lecture, and it's always, I feel like, one of my favorite talks. It's an hour-long talk about something, some late career professor on morphology, and it's always a great talk, and there's always a great reception with food, free food afterwards. So keep your eyes out for the Kaplan lecture. I think that's usually on a Wednesday or a Tuesday. Pardon me, but check the schedule. Finally, the conference center will this year have a little cash and carry lunch cart from Sunday to Wednesday at the conference hotel if you want to get food right on the conference center. I was also doing a little perusing. I love pizza, and so I was perusing for some pizza spots. Seems like there's actually a decent amount of food options around the conference for quite affordable for that seem to be affordable by looking at the menus. Um, Also, this year, with on the registration for students, we did have a section for folks who might have been needing a little more assistance with food. And so we had these food stipends so folks could go to a grocery store and pick up some food. I think we ran out of money for that, but keep your eyes out. It's something that we want to continue to do as a society for students to make sure no one is food insecure at these conferences. That provides some money from the society so that students can, not spend an arm and a leg for food. Great. So we're kind of cruising along. It's 2:30. I want to talk now a little bit about accessibility at the conference. So all talks this year and say in the past couple of years have been just at the one conference center. So there's no issue of running between buildings during the day. Like for example, in Alaska, there were some at this one conference center, and then there's some at the hotel, which were about 3 blocks apart, which made getting to and from some sessions pretty hard. So that's not an issue here, which is great. Um, the hotels with room blocks are very close to the conference center. Either you're at the hotel at the conference center, or you might be at the Marriott, the Courtyard Marriott, which are very short, around 10 minutes. But something more specific to each presentation session in terms of accessibility is to be really cognizant about where you're sitting within that hall. Depending on some of these sessions, they could be somewhat small rooms. And if you are very able-bodied, or as well as if you're going to be at, say, that session for the whole hour-long period it might be good to sit more in the middle of the row versus sitting on the edges, just so folks who might be running from a different room to that room can quickly kind of get into the room and find a spot on the edge and not make as much of a commotion as like trying to come in and there's no rooms on the sides and they have to mosey their way into the middle. So try to be cognizant of where you're sitting, but also take that also as a piece of advice for, say, if you're going to be moving from session to session, you're going to want to sit on the edge so you're not disturbing folks within the session. The conference venue also has access to a lot of cool things to make this conference accessible to all, such as a quiet room. We have a secure refrigerator for medications. We have fidget spinners, which are able to be checked out, as well as eye masks for sleeping, as well as gender neutral bathrooms. The gender neutral bathrooms, the quiet room, and then how to check out these fidget spinners and the eye masks, as well as finding, the secure refrigerator for the medications, is all you can find that under the accessibility tab on the conference website. So feel free to make use of these resources. Please do. So moving on to presenting about at the conference. Hopefully some of you are presenting here, but say you missed filling out an abstract that came out, all the way back in March. It's not too late if you didn't fill out that abstract form. You can still submit a recent topics poster, so you can give a poster presentation, as well as you can still submit an abstract for a lightning talk, which is a quick 3-minute presentation. It's at most 3 slides. It's really great for folks who might have just started a new project and you just want to get some feedback and get, your ideas out to the public. And it's just kind of, you don't even need to have any results. It just could be like, hey, I'm working on Catopsis. It's a great genus. There's all this cool variation in it, and this is what I'm going to do. Have that could be an outline, and then that'll fill up 3 minutes pretty quick. But say you are interested in doing a poster or giving a lightning talk, you can still submit one of these through July 11th, and you can find that information on the main page of the conference. If you are giving an oral presentation, one big piece of advice is to really know your audience and also design your talks with clarity. So check the schedule. You'll be able to see which session your talk is in. And with that, you want to try to tailor your talk to that session. So for example, I'm giving a talk in the population genetics section. And so I know that there's some things that most folks who do pop gen will just already know. So I won't in terms of the introduction of my presentation, because you only have 15 minutes total for your block, which should be about 13 minutes for your presentation, 2 minutes for questions. So it can really make it so you don't have much time to give a lot of background. So just expect that folks in that session would be in your subfield and you don't need to go too deep into it. Maybe just go into background specifics that are related to your taxa of interest or your questions. Some other presenting tips is to make sure that your slides are very visual, not a text-heavy slide. For example, I love Eddie. He is an fern ecophysiologist. This slide's, I gotta say, it's pretty text-heavy, but mind you, this is 25 years of questions within the field of fern ecology and ecophysiology, I mean. And so that's okay. There's a lot of text here, but just make sure that you're really trying to make your slides visual and think about where people are going to be as well in the conference center, in the session hall. I mean, like this is a good kind of example of what each room will look like. And so you can expect, like I was sitting pretty much in the middle of the session and it's a little bit hard to see some of this text. So just be very cognizant that especially folks in the back of the room might have a tough time reading. So I got one question. I will respond to that in a second. I'll answer that at the end, but that's a really great question. It's about networking, so I'll save that for later. Another big takeaway for presenting is to also have some conclusion slides that have your main results or your main, takeaways from your presentation. And with this, broadly, your whole presentation should really have about like one theme or one idea per slide. And then within each section, if you have multiple sections, have like one big key takeaway. Something that many folks have told me about presenting as well is if you get nervous giving oral presentations, which I very much do, is to script out your first couple of slides, maybe just your first, like after your title slide, your first and second slide potentially, just so when you start, the adrenaline will be pumping, but you have already practiced like verbatim. You have a script of how these 2 slides should go. And then once you feel comfortable, giving that, then the rest of the presentation kind of can go smoothly. Like it's always a blur after that, but if you can confidently nail the first couple of slides, that seems to help a lot of folks who get nervous about giving presentations. Also, from a lot of these conference halls, you do have a situation where you can easily have a presenter view and then have your slides being presented. So by all means, feel free to use the notes section of presentations as well, just to have some bullet points so to stay on track. Quick question from Eddie about the lightning talks. Can you share a bit more about how the lightning talks work? Are they presented in the main conference session? Yes, they are presented in the main conference session. There is a session, like a chunk that is meant for lightning talks. And you would just put your 3 slides into this presentation, and then it would be like, Eddie, you're up to talk about ferns, and then you give your presentation and you sit down. So it's very quick, very rapid, but it is within one of the main sessions on one of the days from Monday to Wednesday. Yeah. So moving on to giving a poster presentation, a lot of these same rules apply, but there are some differences. For example, one of the big things to think about when we're making a poster is to think of it more as a conversation starter, your poster, not as a mini paper. Like Jeremy, he was a visiting student in the spec lab, the lab I'm in last year, and I really loved his poster. I think he did a great job at, it could stand without him being there, but when he was there, it really became this conversation starter about what the work he was doing within the sedge genus Bulbostylus. And it was very visual, as you can see here with the phylogeny and the map. But he also, had big fonts, and there wasn't massive long paragraphs. That also is to say, so you want to make sure you think of your poster as a conversation starter. And with that, you also want to make sure that if someone comes up to your poster and they're just like, a lot of folks, they come up and they say, hey, like, tell me a little bit about your work or your poster. You want to make sure that you have maybe a 1 to 2 minute summary that you can give when someone walks up. 9 times out of 10, when you're giving a poster presentation, if you have a 1 to 2 minute summary, the person who came up and was looking at your poster will have follow-up questions. And so you give this 1 to 2 minute summary and it will become more of a conversation. Like that you could have this 2 minute summary that then gets spread out to about 10 minutes just based on you mentioning something, they ask a question, you continue. So really just be open to having a real conversation with folks, and letting your poster stand, but also making sure that it's not a mini paper with just being dense with material. Moving on to networking, which is a big goal of a lot of folks here, it seems to be, based on that word cloud. As we mentioned within some of the general tips, it's great to come up with a plan about how you will approach people. And so what that could be like is, say, for example, you are a plant scholar, so you have mentors that have been assigned to you. You can tell your mentors, be like, hey, I really want to find a grad school advisor. And then they can help you plan, what type of advisor are you looking for, as well as can give you suggestions about which people to talk to, as well as something that I don't think is talked a lot about is, utilize your network and utilize like other people to network. So for example, if you run into Ben or I at the conference, introduce yourself and say, hey, like, I really want to network with like, grad mentors. And then if you tell, say, Ben or I that, then we can help bring you to the folks that we know. So it's like really leverage your own community that you have, and then they can help you really network and approach the people who you want to, which can be it can make approaching folks by yourself much easier when, say, you have someone else being like, hey, Chelsea Specht, like, can I introduce you to Ben? He is my plants scholar. And then from there, then then the conversation can easily flow. So that's one really big tip. Great. That's a great question. Sorry, Ben's got something to say.
Yeah, I wanted to say there's a question in comment section.
Yes, so I just saw that. So the question from Tarian is, I'm curious if anyone has volunteered before and know what's expected, especially for volunteering at talks. So great question. So volunteering at talks, being a moderator, it's super low key. You'll get some information before the conference, but pretty much all that is expected of you is to keep time. So make sure that when folks get to, say, their 13-minute mark of their presentation, holding up like a 2 minute like sign to be like, hey, you got 2 more minutes to wrap it up. If they don't finish in those 2 minutes, then you usually would just stand up next to the presenter and then help them kind of know that it's time for them to wrap up. As well as if you are a moderator, you're going to also be introducing folks. So you just be like, hey, I'm introducing, or not introducing, but like our next talk is from Josh Felton on the evolution of catopsis. That's all you have to say. You just say their name and then their title. And then you also help make sure that the computer that's in that presentation room has all the talks has all the talks, which you're not the one reaching out to the folks being like, send me your talk. That is done through the conference website. Everyone uploads their own talks, but you just have to click on, within that folder, be like, all right, now it's Josh. Let me click on his presentation and have it pull up. You also, as the moderator, like folks usually come into the session who are giving a talk during that session, they come in a little bit earlier, sometimes just to make sure that their presentation looks good on the website or on the slides. And so you might just help them find the computer and just make sure everything looks good. It's pretty low key. Usually you're paired with another person. Sometimes you're by yourself, but it is really a pretty low key commitment.
Then sometimes some of the presenter might not send their talks very early. It might be the same day they are presenting. So the job of moderator is to ensure that he gets the talks from them and load it up for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Great. So while we're answering questions too, we had a private message to me from Nidhi asking, what is the best way to network? Would it be best to have a LinkedIn that people can access, a business card, etc., etc.? That's a good question. And it really kind of depends on what works best for you. Say if you already have a LinkedIn, that would be great. When you're in your conversation with someone, you might be like, hey, check out my LinkedIn. Like you could have a QR code on your phone that people can scan and it goes straight to your page so that they can connect with you. A business card is great, but as I kind of mentioned, like having a QR code we're living in such a crazy age where people can just scan that with their phone and then boom, they could have all your contact information there. I really like networking over social media. Usually I would just say, do you have a Blue Sky account? And then you can direct message them later from there to get their email or whatever. But just making sure that you have some way to connect with that person that you're networking with after the fact. So a LinkedIn connection, so you can message them there, an email, a phone number potentially, a business card which has their contact on it, or Blue Sky or some social media where you can continue the conversation. Trevor, I'm going to answer your question in a little bit once we get back to the broad questions, but that is also something that I should have mentioned earlier. So when networking, people love to talk about themselves. So asking questions can really start the conversations. You could, if you caught their talk earlier that day or earlier in the conference, you can ask them, a follow-up question about their presentation. Say you were a little bit too nervous to ask it during the session itself. That's a great way to network. Like talk to them about the research. You can also just be curious. I think is a really important skill within networking to build your connection. Okay, talking to people is more valuable than attending talks. Okay, this presentation was built a little bit by more than just me and Ben as student rep. So I think Eli, our past student rep, put this in there. I don't think talking to people is more valuable than attending talks, but it is a key skill to succeed in academia is building your network and making sure that folks know who you are and you know who other folks are for potential collaborations in the future. Finally, as I was mentioning, Use mutual connections to meet people, ask your advisors/colleagues to introduce you to people. And if you feel comfortable, by all means, introduce others to people that you think they might like to meet. Finally, for networking, join affinity groups and attend their events, such as the LGBTQ affinity group, the BIPOC affinity group. There's many more of those. You can find that on the registration page under the socials. Jennifer, I'll also answer your question in a little bit. Finally, be ready with a pitch about you and your interest within this conversation. A lot of the times, especially if you're talking to more like faculty members, they're going to want to know, especially if you're looking for them to be your advisor, they're going to want to know a little bit about your research interests and where you're at within your career. So be able to talk about what research you have been doing, or if you haven't done any research just yet, talk about what research you want to do, like what topics, what excites you about plants, and why do you want to network with them, and like how can they give you some guidance, some mentorship, some cool ideas. So be ready to pitch some of that stuff to you. Keep it real short, similarly like a minute to 2 minutes at most. And finally, get contact information from people you meet, Blue Sky, email, etc., LinkedIn, to keep the conversation going after the conference. And make sure if there are people who you really are keen to network with, after you make that connection, after the conference, reach out to them and say, hey, it was great to meet you at Botany. Really good talking about whatever you talked about. Let's keep in touch. And something like that. It's just cordial. It's one of those like hidden curriculum things that folks like to see happen when you network. Okay, so we're on to the final questions. And so we have a couple of those. So first, let me answer Jennifer's question about, can you explain the lightning talks a little more? Is it unpublished data, an idea, or a side research project? That once again, everyone's been asking amazing questions. And lightning talks are great because it can be just a broad mix of either unpublished data. It could be just it could be all of these things that you just asked. A cool thing I like about Botany broadly is even the bigger 15-minute session talks, a lot of them are unpublished data. Like my presentation I'm going to be giving is completely unpublished. Like Botany is one of these sciences, especially this conference, that people, aren't worried about them getting if you present unpublished research, it's not going to get scooped. So by all means, it could be unpublished data, or it could just be a side research project. We have a question from Abigail about what are the best questions to ask potential grad advisors. That's a great question, and I'll answer a few. I know Ben's probably got some suggestions, and then if other people also have some questions or have some advice to Abigail, by all means, put that in the chat and respond to her message. But I think some important ones to ask is, one, in this day and age, do they have funding? Is it feasible for them to take you as a grad student? And if they do, like where would the funding be coming from? Would that mean that you would have to teach all 5-6 years? Or do they have a grant that they can have you be a research associate on, and then you would be being paid through the grant, which means that you won't have to teach. Teaching as a TA is great for grad school. Most places require it for at least one semester, but it does take time away from your research. So you do have to think about, hey, if I'm going to be TAing all 6 years, do I want to go into academia and teach, because that TAing experience will be valuable. But say if you want to go into industry, it might not be as valuable, and then you're not wasting time, but you are having to put that time towards preparing materials that could be better used for research. Ben, do you want to answer?
Yeah. Aside asking if they have funding, one of the important questions again is their research interests. Did they greatly align with your own research interest? Because my current advisor right now that I'm with, So one of the email I sent to him, I was like, "Hey, I said that your research interests greatly align with my, so I would like us to meet and have a chat." So immediately we meet, we have a chat. We started discussing about research that he's doing in his lab. So from there, I can feel a sense of connection that hey, there is kind of research alignment between me and this faculty. From there, we pick the conversation up. So I think asking about current research that they are doing in their lab is one of the way forward in talking to potential faculty or potential advisor.
It's a very good point. That is like to say you really want to do some type of project. It's always great to see like, hey, are most folks working on some research that is like broadly within the lab is doing, or are people doing their own kind of separate projects? Like, that's a great question to ask. Um, I think it's also great. Like I asked my my now advisor, um, like what's her mentorship style? Like you can ask them that, leave it very open. You can leave it very open-ended like that, and you can tell a lot about about a potential grad advisor by how they answer that question. They should have a good response, like one explaining how hands-on slash hands-off they are, as well as some other mentorship guidelines. A lot of grads or faculty members also have like lab guidelines or expectations. So you can always be like, do you have any lab or expectations for your grad students? And that is also great to um, understand, will it be a good match between you and the grad advisor? Yeah, I think those are some of the big things. Yeah, let's see. Any other questions? Well, it's kind of crazy. I was surprised that we really hit this on the dot. It is 2:59, um, which is splendid. So if anyone has one more question, by all means to put it in the chat. But if not, then I think we have exhausted our information, but we are both Ben and I are very excited to see y'all very soon at the conference. Please do not be strangers. Come up, say what's up to us. We're gonna be probably hanging out, me and Ben, a lot at the events. So just come up to us and say what's up.